I have here a piece from Aisha. I want to read it because it's a little longish, 4 pages. 4 pages. A woman whose name is Sara Yoheved Rigler writes, she lives in Israel, and she writes about 2 kids, a 9-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, who go on a hike. The name of the hike is Yehudia. It's very popular. It's for experienced hikers only. And it takes 5 hours. So they drop the kids off at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 4 o'clock, which is of course 6 hours later, it's supposed to be a 5-hour hike. So it's sitting in the car waiting for the kids to come back, come out to the other end of the wait, and they're terribly upset because kids didn't show up because an hour late. It takes an hour. Hike takes 5 hours. The kids haven't taken their cell phones because there's a waterfall where they're supposed to jump down 8 meters into a pool. 8 meters is 24 feet. And you have to swim across and then continue climbing. So therefore, the cell phone will be killed by water. So she's sitting in the car and she's waiting there, and she starts saying Tehillim for 40 minutes. And she can't go back into the thing because the road is locked. You can only go by foot. So she starts to walk back the other way on the trail. And then she sees, in 5 minutes, she sees her son running. Sir, where's the daughter? She's already, where's a typical mother? She's frantic. Well, most people will be frantic anyway. So he says that she's not hurt, but she's stuck on the trail. Because they were climbing the less steep part of the trail. When we got to this place, we had to go straight up. Even more than straight up, like the rock comes out toward you. She was too scared to keep going. I tried to help her. I showed her exactly where to put her foot. I begged her to try, but she refused. She spent a long time on the ledge, and she finally told me to go ahead and get her. So she runs back, the mother runs back to the car, and she finds the brochure, and it says emergency telephone number. And she dials it, and she tells the park ranger that her daughter's stuck on the other side of the cliff. He writes out the location. She's just there nervously. And 5 minutes later, 2 uniformed men in a pickup truck pull up with a stretcher and a rope and metal hooks. And they're going to somehow get her up the cliff. And then one of the rangers asks her, is your daughter injured? She says, no, she's just scared. So he says, you and your son stay here. We'll take care of your daughter. Don't worry. And he sees she's saying to him. He says, just continue saying to him. When they told me that I should continue davening, it's less than comforting. But I did. Finally, the pickup truck returns and my daughter smiled in the back. And they get the kids into the car, and on the way, she asked how did the daughter, how did you get you up the cliff? She said, I climbed up myself. You climbed up yourself? I was stunned. I thought you were too scared. I was. But the 2 guys came here to where I was, and the 12 guys stood right behind me and said, Ani Choma, Ka'ali, I am a wall. Go up. And I realized that if I fell back, I would fall on him. So I wasn't scared anymore, I just climbed up. So it starts to talk about this whole concept. It's so moving to me. When a person has undergone a devastating divorce, or given birth to a child with problems, or received a diagnosis, a terrible diagnosis, became bankrupt, somebody died, So the friends and the relatives want to be helpful. But the person's problem is so complicated, we don't have to help the person. I have a friend whose 21-year-old daughter was killed in a terror attack. Everybody in Iraq responded with an outpouring of love and support. 3 months later, my friend mentions me that one of her oldest, dearest friends was avoiding her. This friend who lives far away used to visit every Yom Tov Sukkos. Basically, she didn't come because she didn't call. Then she told me that she walked through the narrow streets of Yerushalayim, the old city, and she's neighbors coming toward her, and then they duck into a side street to avoid meeting her. And I know this is true because there's somebody I know who's very sick, I know for many years. I called this person once, and I'm avoiding to call the person. This phenomenon is widespread and is discussed in psychological literature. People don't know what to say, or they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. They're making it worse. So they avoid the victim of tragedy, exactly when they're most needed. They think it's if their job to pull a person up the cliff, which is impossible. So they become helpless. But I learned something else. Stay firmly behind the person and say, in his words, or even with silence, I am of war, I'm here for you. You are capable of going up. That will give them the courage to take the next step. That means we're not the great rescuer. We're not philosophers. We're not giving them the advice that we don't know what to advise. We're not asking questions about what decisions they made. Why did you choose chemotherapy, etc., and something else? We're not asking them why they did most act of miracle, or if marriage counselor before the divorce. We're not speaking to them with pity. I'm so sorry that your baby's sick. I'm so sorry you lost all your money. I'm here for you. Now, it's so interesting. What do you mean here for you? We were listening to this tape together, and on the tape, Eliyahu from Atlanta, who was getting the kidney, says the biggest chizuk was that about 5 times a day his brothers and sisters called, and they all said, we're here for you. And while I was listening to that, I was astonished. I heard the tape twice. The first time I was astonished, the second time I was still astonished. What does it mean I'm here for you? They weren't giving me a kidney. They weren't doing anything. What do I mean here for you? Well, if you need something, they don't need anything. The person's in a hospital. We're going to bring them food. They have food, kosher food. Maybe sometimes you have to bring. But what does it mean I'm here for you? I don't understand it. I heard the first time I didn't understand it, the second time I didn't understand it. And then when I started reading this piece, which my wife showed me, that's what it's about. I'm here for you. First time, listen, I'm not a young kid. I never heard this before. I'm astonished. Say to the person, I'm here for you. What does that mean? And he says on the tape, Eliyahu says on the tape, that the biggest chizuk was that they called him and they said, we're here for you. What does that mean? I don't know. But the person doesn't feel alone. So I was thinking, and many times I've thought this before, but I never realized it applies to life. You know, when you go in the Shechim without go to Avaya. So everybody says, we've come to give the final respect to the Nifter. We're here for final respect. I don't know what that means. They call it, in Hebrew, to make it sound more English, they call it Koved Achrei. They made the word Koved Achrei, final respect. Somebody made this up and everybody's copied it. I went to look up in the Michal, my mom was going to Brazil, my mom Chazal. I couldn't find the expression Koved Achrei. It's not there anyplace. Doesn't mean it's not there. Maybe it's someplace. Who knows? Maybe it's some hidden letters. It never got recorded anyplace, but who knows where it is. It wasn't even Kovod Achron. By us, we don't call it Kovod Achron. I know it's called a Levaya. Go to a Levaya. What does a Levaya mean? Levaya means to accompany a person. Levoya is to accompany somebody. In fact, Levoya Sameis, we say in the morning, we say after Birchos HaTorah, Levoya Sameis. It's called a Levaya. What does it mean to accompany somebody? We're not going to the grave with them. No, it means that it sounds like a dead person is, we recognize, I don't know what it means, number one. But number two, I don't think, I'm sad. I think I thought of it a long time ago. That seems to me to be correct. Is that we have the understanding how hard it must be to be dead. And that we are accompanying the dead person to show the dead person they're not alone. But I never understood that about living people. That there's such a thing as angel living person, you're not alone. So when I read this tape from my nephew, so I decided that I will go and I will call this person up who I've been avoiding, I called only once, to tell him such a thing. Meanwhile, I spoke to somebody else who I also was very sick. I just discovered that he's sick. It's very upsetting to me. And I said, I'd like to come over and see you. He said, what can you do for me? I said, no, so come in. I came in, I sat with a person, he told me a medical story, he told me what his plans are medically, what's going to be done. Certainly not a pleasant situation that the person was in, very unpleasant. I hope he has a flu shleima. And you know what the person said to me? Thank you so much for coming. He told me, don't come, you don't have to come. He said, thank you so much for coming. Then I have another person who was with a terrible, terrible illness. And just unbelievable. It's just the agony of the refuah is, not much to go through. But he said, well, I called him last night. And he said to me, again, but he tells me every time he's a gentle person. Thank you for calling. Thank you for caring. Thank you for calling. At first, the person that picked up the phone was his wife. Asked how her husband is. Oh, he's getting better, he's getting stronger. Would you like to talk to him? She said, every time when she picked up the phone, would you like to talk to him? Because she knows that it means something to him. So he might know what it means. But to say it means to everybody was a very big finish to me. On the one hand, I thought, I didn't see that. What does a person benefit? But it seems the person does benefit. But I am much older than you guys, and I never knew that. The person benefits from being asked. And you don't want to annoy the person either. Nudnik. It's not bad enough the Sara said he has, you have to go be a nudnik with him. The guy's sick and he's suffering from pain. Hey, how you doing? That's what you're saying that. You shouldn't even go in and say, hey, I try to bang him on the back. Hey, how you doing, Charlie? Smile, cheer up. There are such types also. I wish, I don't wish them on anybody. Nobody needs that when they're sick. But to go in and just to show the person that you care, or to call the person and show them that you care, it seems that they've been prison. And this story that she tells about the woman who felt terrible because she's being avoided by her friends who don't know what to say to her. So right after her daughter's murdered by terrorists, so everybody's there, and they're by Levaya, and they're all crying with her and everything else. But 3 months later, the parent doesn't forget a child so easy. 3 months later, there were 3 years, or even 30 years, I want to tell you, I'm sorry to tell you. So even in 30 years, you don't forget a child. It's unbearable, the death of a child. And they're all avoiding her because they have nothing to say to her. Terrible story. My friend Shoshana Liebman, when everyone in our community was reeling because a mother of many children had been diagnosed with serious illness. They don't even say the word cancer, so they say serious illness. Shoshana walked into their house and announced, I'm here. Give me laundry to fold. You want to do something? Of course, to be a wall for another person, and here's the reason I'm reading this article, because of this next couple of lines. To be a wall for another person, you yourself have to be strong. Not in muscles, but in and Munah. He must absolutely believe the foundations of Yiddishkeit. That everything, including what is painful and challenging, comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything comes from Him. Number two, that everything, including what is painful and challenging, is for our ultimate benefit. Remember, it doesn't say immediate benefit, but ultimate benefit. Because even if it kills a person, it's for their benefit. Why is it their benefit to be killed, to die? Because maybe they're doing terrible things and they'll have a terrible ending for it. Or maybe, since they had a short life, they'll have a bigger schar, because they took less benefits from the world. So the bigger than they. So the first thing is Nachamu. Everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second thing is that all for our benefit, ultimately for our benefit. The person gains from everything. The person gains from everything. Everything is Hatorah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Hatorah, even He's native. Who hated, who made it, who hated more. Second mention, remember, who hated, who made it, who hated more. Who hated, who made it, who hated more. He did good in the past. Who made it, He does good today. Everything He does is good. Who hated, who good future. Everything is for the good. And the third thing is that everything, especially what is painful, is an opportunity for spiritual growth. The person strikes from it. I remember going to a shiva many years ago with a family that I didn't know them directly, but their daughter was married to a Talmud of mine. The guy was at that time very close. He was a Talmud of mine. And she was sitting shiva, and her family was sitting shiva. The shiva was like this. They lived in Flatbush. And they became frum. And they became very frum. The girl was frum, and they became fine, good frum people. And they sent their kid to a yeshiva. The kid was 7 years old, and he was brought home by a school bus. And the driver of the school bus in the Flatbush streets, and one-way streets all over. So in the Flatbush streets, a school bus driver, I know that, I've seen it so many times, he's supposed to park the bus at an angle when he's letting the kid off, so that nobody can pass him. So you fill up the whole street, which is quite easy with a bus, which is long, and the street is narrow. This guy, he just parallel double parked. And another guy who was in a rush pushed his car between the bus and the other parked car, just as the kid was getting off. He killed the kid. These people have been from, recently came from Shabbos and Kashrus. And the girl was sitting there, Shiva, of course, the sister of the child. She was something like 20 or whatever, I don't know what, 22, who knows. And the parents were sitting there. And my wife and I went. And I said to my wife on the way, I said, I hate to go to a place like this. Because they might ask me, Rabbi, why did God do this to us? We just became religious. Why did God do this to us? What am I supposed to say if they answer that question? And they think I know, because I have a beard. It's just terrible to have to go to such a situation. It's just terrible. So what's a baby, 7-year-old baby? We came there, and I was in great fear, as I said to you. Great fear is the right word, but I was nervous about it. They're going to ask me this question. I had a conversation with them. And the mother said to me, she said to me, what God does is for the good. Somehow it's for the good. I couldn't get over that woman's emunah. I couldn't get over that woman's emunah. I just couldn't get over it. A woman's emunah. It's too much. So, in this article she writes that if we cultivate in ourselves the strength to be kind of that which is the foundation of Yiddishkeit, that everything that happens is going to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything that happens is ultimately for the good, and we can steig from everything. I don't know if the last part is so important. I don't know if people are interested in steiging. Certainly you don't tell a person who's sitting here, well, you can steig from this. Boy, that's what you need. You have the nuts to say that. But the person himself should know, if they can bear it, it's very painful. I'm not interested in steiging. Do me a favor, Shekayach. No, thank you. I'm not interested in steiging. When the person does steig, the person becomes a greater person from the source. We shouldn't have to steig that way. Nobody should have to steig that way. But let's leave that one out, because that's a hard one. And the first two. The first one is everything the Russian does. Russian does everything. The second one is that everything's for the good. I want to see a guy named, I'm not going to say his name. So he was sitting shiva. And he was sitting shiva for a daughter also. Her daughter was in a car that had 5 girls in it. 2 were in the front, and 3 were in the back seat. And his daughter was the middle one of the back seat. And the car turned over, and his daughter was killed. And nobody else had a scratch on her. Not one other girl in the car had a scratch on her. And this one was killed. She fell, I guess she fell on her head or her neck and broke it. That was it. The car turned over. She said to me, God reached down into the car and plucked my daughter away. I have no question about it. Because how could such a thing happen? She was in the safest place in the car. She was in the back seat. And she was cushioned between 2 people. How can you be safer than that? So very hesitatingly, I said, does it make you feel better when you realize that? When you recognize that? He said, no, it doesn't. So there's no guarantee that it makes you feel better. But I think it gives you strength to bear it. I think it gives you strength to bear it. But the chiddush in this article that I wanted to read to you is, and this is a great truth, and I know it's not, having read the article, I know it's a great truth. Not only if the person has the emunah themselves, but even somebody near them who has the emunah who's not going through it, and therefore it's very easy to have such an emunah because you're not going through it, you're not suffering the pain. But even a person who has the emunah themselves, who brings himself close to the person who's suffering, can also be machazik the person without preaching to them, but just by their own strength, because it's sort of catching. It radiates. I know that. I used to ask my father what to have a token for me on many things. First I asked him, can you have a token for somebody? He said, yes you can. I said, will you have a token for me? I said, yes I will. Mama, right? What a person he was. I said, can you have a token for somebody else? I said, yes. I said, will you have a token for me? He said, yes. I said, have a token for me for this and this and this. Said, okay, I have a token for you. A person gives you strength. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that marvelous, all right? The truth of the matter is that in a circle of people, of friends, one person gives a lot of chesed to the other people. It's true b'chlal. One person is, let's say, firmer than the rest. They're all firm because of this person. One cousin in a family is like, I want to call him a little rabbi, because somebody would make fun of him, I want to call him a little rabbi. But one person, a little tzaddik, of course, he's the firm guy. The whole family is moved by it. The whole family. The other guys that are very far from it, very often, the guy remains Shem Shabbos because he has a cousin who's similar. Believe it or not. It's amazing. And he's very, he will never say it, never admit it. And he'll never ask it. But the guy, he's, by nature, he's not a guy who gets up to chakras. If he davens at all, maybe he'll still for 2 seconds, makes him more, maybe he doesn't even do that. So he doesn't wash or bench or anything like that. Mincha's out of the question. The day's too busy. But he has a cousin or a brother or somebody who's sitting and learning in the back of the mitzvahs. So he also is elevated by that. I know that. I've seen that. So he's a much better person because he has such a cousin. Later on in life, they brag to somebody, do you know, your name is so-and-so, do you know my cousin so-and-so, do you know my cousin so-and-so? That's as far as Shmir Satzar is concerned. I've seen that day and night. This is to me a new revelation. That's why I brought it in to show it to you. My wife just got a hold of it. Somebody sent it to her. It's a new revelation. It's not just in Shmir Satzar. It's in Emunah. It's in B'tachon. It gives chizuk to other people. And it's easier for you, of course, to have it than that person who's suffering. It means a lot to them. So let me just review again. Of course you have to know how to talk to them. But saying I'm here, or maybe not saying I'm here, just being there silently. How are you? I want you to know I care. This person that I'm hesitating to call because I don't know what to say to this person. I know what to say now. First of all, I told you I made up my mind to call the person. First thing I want to tell him, I doubt you every day, which is true. I have his name, I'm doubting for him. I want to know that. Why would I? Not because he should have a course that left him in classes shows. Because I want to know that I'm doubting for him. You should know people doubt for him. People care. And then I had another experience that went with this one. That a bacher here in the yeshiva told me that they must be like a chayla by him. I asked the bacher how, when this person was sitting, I asked the bacher, how did he respond? He said, I was very happy that we came. And that proved to me that what it says in this article is true. Because if the person didn't want, he would say, I got enough service, but I have to go put up with these kids who want to do mitzvahs. I'm going to be the subject of their mitzvahs. They want to use me for an esrog. They want to get a mitzvah, so I should be their esrog. My lud, they want to shake me. What do I have to put up with this for? So, from the response to this, Baruch told me, I saw that it's not true. And then I will call him and see what his response is. See, I'm supposed to be in Israel. I don't know exactly when. But this parasha of the Torah is motivating about. Motivating about. And the minimum of the Torah that a Yid is supposed to have, the minimum, is to know that it comes min Hashemayim. Everything is from the Hashem. And the last thing I'll tell you is about a mother of a child here. And this mother, her son, over the base marriage, you see the dedication, over the base marriage, that's her son. He died, I think, was 34 years old. And this mother also died very young, but she died before him. She was in a hospital, and they called her up. About 3 weeks before she was nifteres. And she said to me, I have absolutely been talking to Baruch that everything's, he's taking care of everything's great. Everything's good. And I heard it in her voice yesterday. She didn't just say it. I didn't ask her. She said it herself. Absolute trust in Baruch. He's doing the right thing. Shakes you up. So talking about it, hearing about it, and understanding it is so important, so valuable. What an asset. And what is the asset? That's what the Alta says. The Alta says there's two things. Means that the B'tachim, what it does for you. That means that it's an asset. I used the Russian when I told you, trying to explain it. You have it in your pocket. So people follow the asset to have in your pocket. It's two things. The first thing is that the Mamash believes you when you need it. But the second thing is that you got it in your pocket. It's like walking around it's like walking around in Auburn with a pistol in your pocket. Annoying. One more.